Good morning. Oh, let's just jump right in and start a Bible study. I'll start reading, and you say hi once you get here. Oh, I hear a baby crying in the other room. I might have to go get her. We'll see. The next day, Acts 10, verse 9. As they went on their journey, they drew near the city, and Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour, so noon, lunchtime prayer. Then he became very hungry, it was lunchtime, and he wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance. Ecstasis, where we get the word ecstasy from. And it just describes a state of being out of your mind with amazement. And so it's just like a day vision he was having, and saw heaven opened and an object like a great sheet bound at four corners descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of four-footed beasts, animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. I don't know if Sarah Culver is going to hop on today, but basically it's like her living room in a blanket. And and a voice came to him and said, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything uncommon or unclean." And a voice spoke to him again a second time, "What God has cleansed, you must not call common." This was done 3 times, and the object was taken up into heaven again. So, I'll be right back. Y'all just stay right here, and one of you should talk to someone else. 1 second. I'm coming. Boom. She just woke up. She was crying, and I felt bad leaving her in there just to do a Bible study. Can you say hi to everyone? There you go. Okay, so Peter has this vision. Now, you know what's funny in this text that we just looked at is in verse 14, right? Peter says, "Not so, Lord." Thirsty? "Not so, Lord." Are we allowed to say that, right? When God tells us something, we say, "Not so, Lord." It's like an oxymoron. You really can't say, "Not so," and "Lord" at the same time. Now, Peter has been filled with the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2. He was filled with the Holy Spirit again in Acts chapter 4. Might I propose to you that at this moment, although Peter, he's not in sin, he's not, walking away from the Lord, he's not doing anything crazy, he's doing morning prayer. So it's not like he's been drifting in his devotional life. But might I challenge and say that if you're full of the Spirit and you are just, right exactly where you need to be, when God talks to you, you don't tell God no. "Peter, take and eat." "Not so, Lord." But, it's funny. God had to do this 3 times because that's how slow guys are, right? We never learn anything on the first time. God has to do it a second time. Then God has to do it a third time to finally get our attention. And I kind of felt like making this morning a little shorter. And this is, I guess, the nutshell of it all, is this sheet coming down, what I have called, what God has called cleanse, you must not call common, is Peter's going to go minister to the Gentiles. This vision was symbolic of that God was going to send him to go minister to the common, unclean Gentiles, but Peter would need to do so in faith, trusting that he should not call common or unclean what God has called cleansed. So that's what the actual, vision is supposed to be for. And we're going to get back to Cornelius, who we started yesterday. But it's just zeroing in on this one thing, the response of Peter. In Galatians, we read that Paul the apostle had to rebuke Peter because of his sectarian attitude at Antioch. Peter, when he saw James, Jesus' brother, his disciples come up to Antioch. Now, James was the pastor or bishop, if you will, of Jerusalem in the early church. And James the Just, who wrote the book of James, he was like a heavy hitter. And so many of his followers were very Jewish. And so when Peter saw them, he started acting much more like his old Jewish self. And Paul has to rebuke him. So what I'm just examining in Peter, the apostle, is that he had moments where he still slipped up and acted a little less holy than he really should have, a little less trusting than he should have. He would say, "Not so, Lord." What does this go to show? It goes to show that the greatest men of the Bible, Paul, Peter, Moses, others, David, oh, don't get started with David, right? The greatest men of the Bible, the ones whom we should most actively model our own lives after, specifically men, because I just listed a bunch of men, but there's great godly women too, right? But it's, these guys still messed up. They still made mistakes. They still responded to God in the flesh. Not so, Lord. And so it just encourages me to see their humanity, to see their frailty, to see that they still, their gut response is to answer in the flesh. Not so, Lord. So how much more you and me, that we might respond in the flesh sometimes. That we, when God first speaks to us, we're reading the Bible, we're doing our morning devotions, you read something and you know it's screaming your name, right? You're looking and there's the verse and all it says is Julia, Julia. I just saw you log on, so there's your name. Vianette, Vianette. And you're like, not so, Lord. And you flip the page. But God maybe brings it back a second time. And then the next day you read it a third time, just like Peter here with the sheet 3 times. And then finally Peter gets it. All right, Lord, you're speaking to me. You coming over here too, Benny? Come here. You want yogurt? Well, not so, Benny. Not so. Ugh. Okay. So, that's what I'm talking about. Is not so, Lord. Is we all get to this place where we respond in the flesh sometimes. And God might have to tell us 3 times or 30 times before we finally, okay, like, I get it, Lord. And if you're that way, just know that you're not really any different than Peter or Paul or Moses or David or one of the guys that we don't know, like Ahithophel. No, that's not a good example. Ahithophel's bad. He didn't end well. But, some random guy. So just be encouraged. Peter, Paul, John, James, you name it. They all had moments of weakness, moments where they fought back and they struggled. And we do too. And that's normal. The difference is how long are you going to hold out until you answer what God has told you? And maybe you have recently had God speak something to you where he's kind of shown you a glimpse of like, I want to take you to the next level, to the next stage, but you need to be willing to listen when I'm talking to you and not just keep saying, not so, Lord. And so God will give you multiple opportunities to respond. Looks like the kids need me. So I'm going to go, but I hope you guys have a blessed day. And thank you for saying hi if you logged in with me here. So love you guys. Have an amazing day. And if you hear God speak to you today, try your best not to say, not so, Lord. Take care.